Imagine being drowned in a sack with live animals as punishment for a crime. This wasn't a nightmare. It was reality in the Ottoman Empire. From being impaled on spikes to having your skin slowly removed, today we're counting down the most horrific punishments that Ottoman officials inflicted on criminals and enemies of the state. Like and subscribe to learn about these brutal methods that will make our modern justice system seem shockingly humane. 3. The foundation of Ottoman justice: lesser punishments. What would you do if your punishment for stealing was having your hand cut off in public? For many in the Ottoman Empire, this was just the beginning of their justice system. The Ottomans developed a complex legal framework that merged Islamic Sharia law with secular Qanun laws established by the sultans themselves. This dual system created a comprehensive approach to justice that permeated every level of society. The Ottoman courts, known as divan, operated under the authority of qadis, judges who interpreted both religious and secular laws. These officials wielded tremendous power, determining punishments based not only on the crime itself, but also on the criminal's social standing, religion, and even their relationship with local authorities. While the system claimed to deliver justice, it often served as a mechanism for control and intimidation. Even what the Ottomans considered minor punishments were designed to inflict maximum humiliation and suffering. Take the falaka, for instance, a common punishment for petty crimes that involved restraining the victim on their back while their feet were secured in a wooden device. The executioner would then strike the soles of their feet repeatedly with a wooden rod, causing excruciating pain as the sensitive nerve endings were damaged. Victims often couldn't walk for weeks afterward, and some suffered permanent disability if bones were broken during the beating. The Ottomans understood that effective punishment wasn't just about physical pain. Public humiliation could be equally devastating. Criminals convicted of fraud or minor theft were frequently paraded through busy marketplaces with signs detailing their crimes hung around their necks. Merchants who cheated customers might be forced to stand for hours with their ears nailed to their shop doors. These public spectacles served a dual purpose: punishing the individual while warning others about the consequences of similar actions. Social status played a crucial role in Ottoman justice. The wealthy could often avoid physical punishment by paying blood money or diet to victims or their families. This practice created a two-tiered justice system where the poor faced brutal corporeal punishment while the elite could literally pay for their crimes. A common saying in Ottoman territories reflected this reality: the rich man's coin is sharper than the sultan's sword. Women faced their own unique punishments under Ottoman law. Those accused of adultery or immodest behavior might be stripped to the waist and paraded through town on donkeys, facing backward to maximize shame. In some cases, they would have their heads shaved before being banished from their communities. A social death sentence in a society where family connections meant everything. What made the Ottoman punishment system particularly insidious was its deliberate use of psychological torture. Those awaiting judgment were frequently forced to witness the punishments of others convicted of similar crimes. Imagine spending days in a damp cell, listening to the screams of fellow prisoners, knowing your turn would come next. By the time you faced your own punishment, your mind had already been broken by anticipatory terror. Ottoman officials understood that fear was often a more effective control mechanism than actual punishment. Public executions were scheduled during festivals or market days to ensure maximum attendance. Children were brought to witness these events as educational experiences, normalizing state violence from an early age. The message was clear: the empire saw everything, and disobedience would not be tolerated. Among the lesser but particularly cruel punishments was the practice of ear cutting, a permanent mark of shame that identified repeat offenders to everyone they encountered. Another was the shame parade, where criminals were forced to ride backward on donkeys through town while wearing animal intestines around their necks, often while crowds pelted them with refuse. 2. Brutal methods for serious crimes. While ear-cutting and shame parades marked criminals for life, those who committed serious offenses against the Ottoman state faced a fate that would make even the most hardened criminals tremble. The punishment hierarchy in the Ottoman Empire was carefully designed to match crime severity with appropriate suffering. Crimes against the state, religious blasphemy, and serious violent offenses demanded far more extreme measures than mere humiliation or physical marking. For these grave transgressions, Ottoman authorities developed punishments specifically engineered to maximize pain while extending the victim's suffering. Take the practice of bastinado, which evolved beyond the basic falaka punishment. In its more severe form, executioners would systematically fracture every bone in the victim's feet with iron-tipped rods, causing excruciating pain while ensuring the condemned remained conscious. Court physicians sometimes attended these sessions to monitor victims, preventing the mercy of unconsciousness by reviving them with specialized tonics when they fainted from pain. These punishments transformed city squares into theaters of agony. The Ottoman authorities mastered the art of staging, positioning scaffolds and punishment platforms where crowds could gather in a semicircle, creating what one European diplomat called arenas of justice where suffering became spectacle. Musicians sometimes played during these proceedings, creating a carnival atmosphere that mixed entertainment with state terrorism. Perhaps most terrifying was the method of slow boiling. Convicted criminals were placed in large metal cauldrons filled with cold water. Executioners would then build fires beneath, gradually heating the water over hours. What made this punishment particularly horrific was its methodical pace. The condemned would experience every increment of temperature change, from discomfort to unbearable agony, before death finally came. According to chronicles from the 17th century, one observer noted that the victims' screams would gradually transform from desperate pleas to inhuman shrieks as the temperature rose. The strappado represented another level of calculated cruelty. Victims had their arms bound tightly behind their backs before being hoisted by ropes attached to their wrists. The weight of their bodies dislocated shoulders and stretched ligaments beyond natural limits. But Ottoman executioners refined this technique further. They would repeatedly drop the victim several feet before suddenly stopping the rope, causing additional joint dislocations and muscle tears. Some accounts describe victims being left hanging for days, their bodies contorting into unnatural positions as tissue damage increased. What's particularly disturbing about these punishments is that they were often preceded by extensive torture sessions designed to extract confessions. The Ottoman interrogation chambers employed devices like heated metal plates, applied to the soles of feet and specialized tools that could slowly crush fingers joint by joint. This created what modern historians call a double punishment system. Victims endured torture before their formal punishment even began. Ottoman court records detail how judges calibrated these punishments based on both crime and criminal. Punishing religious offenses required particular spectacle to demonstrate the empire's role as defender of Islam. Those convicted of apostasy or blasphemy might endure all these methods in sequence, a progression of agony that could last for days before death finally came. While these punishments were horrific, Ottoman officials considered them merciful compared to the ultimate penalties reserved for the empire's worst enemies. Court documents from the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent reveal the Sultan's own assessment that boiling death, while terrible to witness, remains preferable to what awaits traitors to our throne. This calculated approach to suffering, where even extreme torture was deemed moderate compared to what might follow, created a climate of profound fear among Ottoman subjects. 1. Ultimate punishments, the most horrific Ottoman executions. The warning from Suleiman the Magnificent about fates worse than boiling death wasn't mere imperial posturing. For those who committed the ultimate crime of challenging the Sultan's authority, a set of specialized execution methods awaited. Punishments so meticulously crafted to maximize suffering that they represented the pinnacle of Ottoman penal innovation. These weren't simply deaths, they were elaborate productions designed to communicate the absolute power of the empire. Impalement stood as perhaps the most dreaded punishment in the Ottoman arsenal. Unlike quick executions, this method transformed death into an excruciating performance that could last for days. Executioners possessed specialized knowledge of human anatomy, inserting greased wooden stakes through the victim's body with surgical precision. The stake would enter through the rectum or perineum and be carefully guided to avoid piercing vital organs. The victim would then be hoisted upright, their body weight slowly driving them further onto the stake while gravity did its cruel work. Records from the 16th century describe how specialized executioners took pride in their ability to keep victims alive on the stake for up to 3 days. The Ottoman chronicler Ibrahim Peçevi wrote of one such executioner who boasted of keeping a particularly notorious rebel alive for 2 days and 1 night, during which time he conversed with passers-by about his crimes against the Sublime Porte. These grisly displays were strategically positioned at city gates or along major roads to ensure maximum visibility. For those who committed crimes deemed particularly offensive to Ottoman sensibilities, the Kizil Kürk, or red fur, awaited. This punishment involved the methodical removal of the victim's skin while they remained conscious. Beginning at the feet, specialized torturers would carefully separate skin from flesh using heated knives, working their way upward. The victim, still alive and fully conscious through much of the process, would eventually be left exposed to the elements where insects and the sun would compound their suffering. Women faced their own specialized horrors, particularly those convicted of killing their husbands. The punishment known as kese involved sewing the condemned into leather sacks, along with various venomous creatures, typically scorpions, snakes, and occasionally wild cats. The sack would be transported to the Bosphorus Strait, where it would be cast into the deep waters, leaving the victim to face their death in darkened isolation, torn between drowning and the venomous attacks within the sack. Even the Ottoman elite weren't exempt from capital punishment, though their positions afforded them certain privileges in death. Officials who fell from an imperial favor typically faced bowstring strangulation, a method considered honorable as it preserved the body without blood spillage. The Sultan would dispatch executioners with a silk cord, often embedded with silver or gold thread proportional to the victim's rank. This method allowed the condemned to maintain dignity in death, permitting proper Islamic burial rites afterward. What distinguished these Ottoman punishments wasn't merely their brutality, but their theatrical nature. Executions of high-profile traitors could attract thousands of spectators and were often scheduled to coincide with religious holidays or diplomatic receptions. When the Ottoman forces suppressed the Serbian uprising of 1814, the rebel leader Haji Prodanovac, impaled in the central square of Belgrade in the presence of foreign dignitaries, a calculated display of Ottoman justice and power. Perhaps most disturbing was how these methods evolved over the centuries, becoming more refined in their application. Court records from the late 17th century reveal modifications to impalement techniques that prolonged suffering while preventing premature death. The introduction of specialized stakes with crossbars prevented victims from sliding too quickly onto the stake, extending their agony. Similarly, the kese punishment evolved to include specifically selected animal combinations based on the season and the perceived severity of the crime. Looking back through the mists of time, the Ottoman punishment system stands as a stark reminder of how far human justice has evolved. What began as ritualized displays of imperial power has transformed into systems prioritizing rehabilitation rather than retribution. Where once crowds gathered to witness the suffering of criminals, today we debate the ethics of humane treatment for even the worst offenders. So what punishment do you think would have been the worst to endure? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through Ottoman justice, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden chapters of history.